It's mail time on the USS Voyager, one that's anticipated more than usual after last month's expected transmission didn't arrive. This one is a little unusual, both from its size and composition. The reason is because it's a hologram, and despite making a bit of a kaboom in the process, Kim manages to squirt it into the holodeck. It's a puzzle interesting enough to pull in Janeway, and she's there when the program is first booted. It's none other than the Murdoch Muppet, the man largely responsible for using the MIDST array to contact Voyager in the first place. It's not really him, of course, but rather a tech support program in his image. After all, they'll need an expert if the latest plan to get them home is going to work. The one where we make a portal between two stars and fly Voyager through it all the way home to the Alpha Quadrant. The star on our side of the portal is one we'll soon be reaching. A little more time to prepare would have been useful, but that didn't work out according to the holographic Murdoch Muppet. They tried to send an earlier version of his program last month and balked the MIDST array, which is why we didn't get any mail. The result of the delay is that they've only got 3 days, and a significant quantity of work to do if they're to safely travel without a special kind of radiation making them all do it dead. We'd best have a meeting to talk about it, and one that's attended by the holographic Murdoch Muppet after borrowing the Doc's mobile emitter. He's brought upgrades to make the shields help against the radiation and data on meds to protect the crew from anything that gets through. We're also repairing that kaboom from earlier so we can respond to Starfleet and let them know the plan is a go. Kim's already celebrating, but Paris is a little more reserved, which is a polite way of saying that he thinks this will all turn to shit. Maybe it's his cynicism, maybe it's the negative associations he has with home, or maybe it's because he's noticed we're only on episode 6 of the season. His pessimism is well founded. Back on Earth, the real Murdoch Muppet is trying to find out why his hologram didn't get to Voyager. Twice. Both times the signal terminated part-way along the path, and he thinks there's something going on. Pete, his boss, believes that they were just failures and the array simply can't send holograms. That's a curious conclusion when we managed to send the Doc through it a few months back, but let's ignore that for now. Maybe part of that belief is because a certain Admiral Paris, he of shitty father fame, is annoyed by these reported failures and wants to go back to sending normal transmissions. That doesn't stop the real Murdoch Muppet from investigating the problem, and after an outburst about how the transmission was intercepted by Borg, or maybe Romulans, in front of some touring school children, Pete decides to send him home. Murdoch seems to agree, even going so far as to say he could take a vacation. While he contemplates a holiday, the holographic Murdoch Muppet is dealing with some concerns from the Doc. He says the new medical juice they plan to pump into the crew isn't much better than what they already have, and is worried that it won't protect them. Holo Murdoch tries to brush the concerns off by saying the new shield upgrades will do most of the work, but the Doc doesn't seem entirely convinced, and he's even less impressed by his request to use the mobile emitter being brushed off too. Kaboom repairs are complete, and it's time to send a response to Starfleet. The holographic Murdoch Muppet calls by Astrometrics to add a status report of his own before it's sent. To the MIDST array we go, and we learn that it's had a small addition since last we saw it. That might explain why a Ferengi ship receives the signal sent by Voyager. Skipping past a video from Janeway, they watch the report from the holographic Murdoch Muppet, who it would appear is working for them. He's included some data on 7 of 9, specifically the Borg mini-bots she carries. They're very valuable, you see, and the Ferengi intend to sell them for an outrageous sum. All they have to do is harvest them from 7's corpse once Voyager's journey through the star portal kills everybody due to the radiation. On a beach with a matte painting of some futuristic buildings in the background, because nothing says relaxing getaway quite like an imposing monolith in the distance, the real Murdoch Muppet is taking his vacation. There's more to it, of course. He's ordered 2 drinks, and that's because the vacation he's chosen happens to be the same one that Diana's on. That would be a heartwarming show of friendship, were it not for the fact that he didn't actually tell her. That's all kinds of weird, and she tells him as much, but not as weird as his claims that they're probably being watched by nefarious agents working for foreign powers. She calms him down with a walk and gets the whole story about the transmission failures to Voyager, and she's surprised to see him this agitated as he was doing so well when they attended a birthday party together recently. He'd even found a new girlfriend, so I guess the thing with Pete's sister-in-law from last season didn't work out. Maybe her opinion of his fireplace was the same as mine. But the new girlfriend left him without a word, and even moved out of her home. What odd behaviour for someone who was so very interested in hearing all about his work. Diana can see the problem, and after a little prompting, the real Murdoch Muppet admits that he has some suspicions about her too. Suspicions are a theme on Voyager as well. While the rest of the crew are entirely taken by the holographic Murdoch Muppet and his repertoire of impressions, the Doc is having trouble. They'd arranged to play golf together, but after being called to the holodeck, the holographic Murdoch Muppet changes his plans and tries to leave. In fact, he becomes rather aggressive and suggests they should stay the fuck away from each other until they get back to the Alpha Quadrant. What odd behaviour towards the one person who has first-hand knowledge of Murdoch. Why, anybody would think it was a deliberate attempt to avoid compromising situations. Speaking of compromising, the real Murdoch Muppet's ex-girlfriend has been brought in for questioning. We learn she's a Darbo girl on a Ferengi casino ship, which comes as a bit of a surprise as she told him that she was a teacher. Admiral Shitdad thinks she's lying about other things too. In fact, he thinks the whole thing was a lie and she was sent here by her bosses to gather data they could use for profit. She denies this, so Diana asks for a moment alone with her to impart the Federation's enlightened policies towards rehabilitation. Just kidding, she instead threatens to have her locked away in a psychiatric institution if she doesn't spill her fucking guts immediately. How noble. Noble or not, it proves effective, and Diana tells the others that the real Murdoch Muppet's hologram was stolen by Ferengi on both occasions. She's also told us where their ship is, so Admiral Shitdad is sending one of ours over to have a chat. And the real Murdoch Muppet learns one final fact. They're all assuming the hologram was stolen to sell, but his ex-girlfriend tells him that this is all about Borg mini-bots. The Doc's decided to share his concerns about the holographic Murdoch Muppet with Janeway. She doesn't sound very convinced, but as she's betting her crew's lives on all of this, a quick check of the program isn't entirely unreasonable. The holographic Murdoch Muppet guesses who prompted the exam, but agrees nonetheless. The results are clean, which is to say that they show the program is the same one that they received and hasn't degraded from being on for so long. The Doc accepts that he must have made a mistake, rather than requesting a deeper investigation into why the guy acted like an asshole, and everybody gets friendly again before preparing to fly through a couple of stars. The Ferengi ship is ready to open the portal and starts pooping orange, though their actions are watched by Admiral Shitdad, who's still hanging around for some reason. Maybe the Pathfinder lab has a better coffee machine than his office. He wants to know what's going on, and the real Murdoch Muppet, after seeing what the Ferengi are doing, has concluded that this is how they plan to get their hands on Seven's mini-bots. Seven herself may have something to say about it. She's scanning the star portal that's being opened and has found a load of unexpected science bollocks in it, ones the shields won't protect them from. Despite the holographic Murdoch Muppet's reassurances, she calls the bridge. He's done with diplomacy and just sticks his holographic fingers into her brain, causing her to either have a nap or do a dead, depending on what he prodded. He impersonates her voice to pretend everything's fine, and we continue with the plan. The real Murdoch Muppet has concluded that Voyager will fly through the portal and kill everybody, the crew having either been misled or incapacitated by his hologram. And we can't warn them either, as this portal is the sort of portal that you can't signal through because science reasons. That leaves us with closing it from this end, and the only people who can do that are the Ferengi themselves. They're unlikely to be convinced by a call from a random stranger, but one that they think is from a subverted hologram? Yeah, that might do it. They're a bit confused to be receiving a call through the portal, what with that whole won't-do-calls thing, but assume the hologram is just really clever. The real Murdoch Muppet, pretending to be the holographic Murdoch Muppet, tells them that they've been rumbled and Janeway's proper pissed. She's also figured out a way to get through the portal unharmed, and has tech that can track and follow them anywhere, so running's off the table. The only way they can prevent getting their asses handed to them, he says, is by closing the portal, and the Ferengi start to unpoop their previous poopings. Celebrations on the holodeck that the real Murdoch Muppet was in are a bit premature from the looks of things. The star portal may be closing and Janeway stopped the ship, but the holographic Murdoch Muppet isn't giving up so easily. He teleports to an escape pod with Seven and points it at the swirly in an attempt to get through before it closes. We can't tractor it because science reasons, so Chakotay tells Kim to try and teleport them back. Feels to me like turning people into atomic soup and transmitting them should be more difficult than a tractor beam, but let's ignore that for now. On the other side of the star portal, the Ferengi detect something hitting their ship. It's an escape pod, but an empty one. At least they can sell it for scrap, I guess. Seven's recovering from having her brain prodded, and the holographic Murdoch Muppet has been switched off. Kim's in the mess hall trying to deal with the overwhelming disappointment of not getting home, but at least he's got some friends to help him through it. They do this by pretending to have found another way home, then laughing right in his stupid fucking face when he goes for it. What a pair of cunts! The real Murdoch Muppet is sticking some security on his hologram just in case they ever try sending it again. Diana arrives and, having considered the crushing humiliation and heartbreak of his most recent relationship, thinks the best way to help is to have set up a date for him. We'll leave him to debate his chances and us to consider the ethics of your psychotherapist being your matchmaker as they walk away. My first thought when I saw this episode's title of Inside Man was, what a great name for a homoerotic spy thriller. My second thought, and probably one with slightly more bearing on this review, is that I like a good bit of subterfuge, as it tends to involve all the things that interest me most in a Trek episode. Deceit and moral quandaries, and an actual plot instead of just shooting a new alien. So I went into this one with slightly above average hopes. The story does technically hit all of those notes, just not very hard or for very long. Which is not to say that it was bad, and we have a couple of points to go over, but there's nothing particularly memorable about it. That's not helped by the feeling that we were here before, and very recently. The use of a transmission from the Alpha Quadrant as catalyst for the story was seen only 2 episodes ago, so this story could have perhaps benefited from being placed later in the running order of the season. In fact, that's not the only part that feels reused in this one. Murdoch's concerns being dismissed as fantasy was previously seen in Pathfinder, as was the idea that all of his problems can be solved by hooking him up with someone at the end of the episode. We could fill a whole video about how problematic it is to suggest that all a perceived weirdo needs to become normal as a partner, so it's probably best if we leave that one there and take a look at those points I mentioned instead. The main topic to discuss is the idea that 7 is a symbol of hope to the Federation and its allies. It's possible that the holographic Murdoch Muppet made that up, an attempt to ingratiate himself with the target of his plan, but I don't think so. Losing people to the Borg isn't like having someone die. There's always the faint possibility of their return, no matter how improbable. In many ways, that's worse, as there's no closure, no opportunity to truly grieve, combined with the knowledge that they're currently enduring something indescribable. 7, then, is the physical proof of the chance that their loved ones could be returned, and she's also an extreme case, having spent more time in the collective than out of it, showing that rehabilitation is possible for any who were taken. There's potentially something more, too, and this one is problematic. Some people may see her as the means of delivering that return, a kind of anti-Borg messiah. She carries with her extensive knowledge of the Borg, and on a ship that's beaten them time and time again. There may well be those among the not quite bereaved who expect her to lead the charge in fighting back. That's obviously a lot of pressure for one person to carry, and it's a touch disappointing that we don't examine the effect on her in more detail, but it's still an interesting plot point to bring up, and one that I hadn't personally considered until the episode spelled it out for me. Some points to whoever included that. We'll end on Paris and B'Elanna, shall we? I doubt I'm alone in thinking that their relationship was framed in such a way as to suggest it would somehow magically fix them both, though mainly focused on reining in Paris's dickishness. It's curiously pleasing, then, to see that this isn't entirely the case. Despite being on record multiple times decrying Paris's behaviour, there's something oddly satisfying about the fact that B'Elanna has leaned into complimenting it. That isn't to say it wasn't a dick move, of course, and it very much was, but the implied insight this brings about their relationship is unexpectedly heartwarming. End of episode.
Right, last one of these. If you're a patron and you've not already voted on what series we do next, you've got 7 days left to make your wishes known.
Are we really shilling for Patreon again?
I know it's bollocks, but this is the best way to get the word out. Besides, for reasons we won't go into, for fear of damaging the intricate world building we spent so long on, the bloke who runs this channel has a not insignificant amount of control over what I say.
Wow. How does it feel to talk about yourself in the third person, you egotistical prick?
Bit weird if I'm honest, but we're committed now. Anyway, go and vote.
Did I detect a subtle hint at politics?
Of course it's not. You wouldn't want to put politics in Star Trek. That'd be weird. Woof.